I'm Scott Kahn. This is the Yeshiva Review. I'm sitting with Rabbi Mordechai Berg, the Menahel of Sharei Mevaseret Zion. Welcome, Rabbi Berg.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me about yourself.
So I have been living in Eretz Yisrael for 9 years now, mid Aliyah, with my, at the time, 4 daughters, now 5 daughters, and my wife Eliza. It's been the most beautiful privilege in the world to be part of Mevaseret and back here in Israel, living the dream, as they say in Nefesh B'Nefesh, and I always tell people I think I have the greatest life in the world. It's a privilege to live in Israel and to teach Talmidim that Baruch Hashem have been enhancing my life. And Chazal say you learn a lot from your Rebbeim, you learn more from your Talmidim, and after 9 years in Mevaseret, I can certainly say that that's true. The
old commercial that says, I'm not just the haircut president, I'm also a client.
Yes, and I make that joke often, and none of the Talmidim get it. I've really begun to date myself. That was a...
So you actually are a graduate of Mevaseret?
That's correct. 18 years ago, I went to Mevaseret. I went to Rambam for high school, and then I proceeded on to Mevaseret. Actually, I did not initially get into Mevaseret. I was accepted to Gush, but I did not get into Mevaseret. Very few people, I think, can lay claim to that. And I was very blessed that they came back for a second interview. And Rav Yedidia Berzon, who's now Rosh Mosdot Mevaseret, I remember he came back and he asked me, why should I take you? And I said, well, I'm going to work harder than most people realize, and I've been waiting to come to Israel. He said, all right, I'm going to advocate for you, and I guess it's been a good journey. Yeah.
I guess everyone won in that one.
Yeah, certainly it's been, Mevaseret has been a place that's really gifted me with a tremendous amount of knowledge and insight into the world around me, and it's something that I feel privileged to give back to the boys.
And what's your role as Menahel? Are you a teacher as well?
Yeah, so I do give shiurim. Unfortunately, a number of years ago, I did have to stop giving a morning seder shiur because, thank God, the yeshiva had grown and there needed to be somebody who was handling all of the day-to-day educationally, overseeing every single talmid in the yeshiva. I still do teach 3 hours every afternoon. Most of my day is spent schmoozing with talmidim, schmoozing with rebbeim, making sure that nobody falls through the cracks, everybody's getting what they need. And so, Litzari, I wish I had the opportunity to continue teaching in the morning. I was makriv my teaching on the korban of the yeshiva.
Tell me a bit about the history of Mevaseret.
So Mevaseret's been around for 28 years. It was opened initially as an alternative to a Hesder program, somebody who wanted to get everything that a Hesder had to offer. But I believe it was one of the first yeshivas out there that said, we're going to cater everything to our boys. So as opposed to being an American program, in an Israeli yeshiva, it was an American yeshiva l'chalutin. Everything about the yeshiva was going to be geared for you. But the advantage that Mevaseret had is it was located in an Israeli campus, on Mevaseret's campus that we're currently on. And so we share our base medrash with an Israeli kollel. There's an Israeli high school on campus. Actually, now we have a French high school on campus as well, with all the olim coming from France because of all the anti-Semitism.
Are those officially associated with the yeshiva, or you share a campus?
We share a campus. We share a base medrash with the Israeli kollel. And I think Mevaseret at the time opened to sort of give you the best of both worlds. Now I think that the concept of having an American yeshiva is sort of, par for the course, and I think that's great. We all work for the same boss. There's a lot of talk about, competition, but to be honest with you, I play basketball with half the rebbeim from the other yeshivas, and I don't really think it's a competition. I think we're all trying to bring something unique to the table. So Mevaseret's been around for 28 years. It's certainly one of the older yeshivas. Yeah, it's been a really great place. It's been, at this point, thousands of alumni, leaders throughout the, Jewish world, everything from doctors and lawyers to rebbeim and poskim and everything in between. So a storied history.
When you talk about every yeshiva trying to bring something unique to the table, I certainly see that in this podcast series. That's what I'm trying to find out. So in your mind, what unique thing does Mevaseret bring to the table?
It's a tough question. I like to be transparent because I think it's a difficult process for an 18-year-old, or 17-year-old when they're senior in high school to go through and to really discern what are the different yeshivot and what do they have to offer. And certainly for the parents, especially for those that haven't done it before and this is their first time. And it's really difficult to sort of, discern what yeshiva does what, as I'm sure you know, because every yeshiva, first of all, is amazing. And every yeshiva more or less sounds the same, because every yeshiva is going to have great learning. And every yeshiva is going to have, incredible rabbanim. And frankly, the rebbeim in Israel and the rebbeim in America. But the rebbeim in Israel that I've seen are the most dedicated rebbeim you'll find in the world. And so I think what I've heard most from the Talmidim is, Rebbe, they all basically sound the same. It's great learning, great Rebbeim, really inspiring. So how do you tell the difference in the yeshivas? And what I always tell the boys is, I don't know that the difference can be seen necessarily in what the yeshivas are doing, but in why they're doing it. And the mission statement of the yeshiva ought to inform the choices educationally that the yeshiva makes. So we have to look at the why and the how, and not necessarily the what, because what we are is a yeshiva. So I'll tell you why Mevaseret exists, and Mevaseret basically exists because we have a belief that every Talmud that we're talking to is basically two people. And to be honest with you, I probably believe this about every member of Klal Yisrael and probably every person I've ever met in the world. But specifically about a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old young man, they're two people. They're the person that they currently are, and then they're the person that they really want to be. And we see our educational mission as bridging the gap between those two people. So that's why we exist. We exist to bridge the gap for the guys, good guys, solid guys. And they're really ready to take it to the next level. That's why they're coming to Mevaseret. We're going to do that in the ways that many yeshivas are. We're going to challenge them in learning. But I think that word challenge means something very much to us because, there's different workout programs today, very different than when you and I were growing up. Today there's insanity. And, there was P90X a while ago. When I was growing up, it was 7-minute abs. And I think now we know that 7-minute abs don't give you abs. And this generation of Talmidim, they really know that if you're going to do something great, it's going to have to be an insane workout. It's going to have to be something that's tough, that's challenging, that takes it to the next level. And, a lot of people will talk trash, so to speak. Again, it's a terrible lashon to use, but it's the reality. You hear a lot of Rebbeim talking about Yeridas Hadoros, the generations, they're going lower and lower. I don't necessarily find that to be true. I think this generation, they want to be challenged, and they're looking for somebody authentic who's going to come along and tell them, look, you're going to have to work hard if you want to do that. If you want to find that deeper dimension of self, then you're going to have to work hard to do it. So our learning in Mevaseret is, of course, to expose them to Yahadus, of course. And, of course, we're going to expose them to everything within Yahadus. But the idea really, I think, is to challenge them. And through that challenge, they become the people that they know they have inside of them. My father, who I respect greatly, always told me there are two people that go home at 5 o'clock. There's the CEO, and then there's the people that will never be CEO. It's the same thing in yeshiva. If you want to be great, you're gonna have to put up or shut up, and you're gonna really, hopefully, take it to the next level in terms of who you are as a person. And I mean that in all dimensions. I don't just mean that in learning, but in davening and our relationship with Hashem as it manifests itself in Shabbos and in everything that we do.
So let's talk about that challenging curriculum. What sorts of things do you have? Is the curriculum different from other yeshivot, or is it a standard yeshiva curriculum? Let's start with that first.
Yeah, again, I couldn't speak to the other yeshivot because I don't work for them, so I don't really know what goes on behind closed doors. I will tell you that Mevaseret is a balanced day, and there's a real ebb and a flow to it. So in the morning, you're going to have Gemara. And I'll tell you, again, not to speak too much about myself, I don't want to spread my narcissism on the air, but when I went to Mevaseret, they initially put me in the Rosh Yeshiva shir. An intelligent young man certainly can handle the shir, but I didn't know how to read in high school. I never learned how to read. And when I say read, I mean I could read the words, but I didn't know how to translate. I didn't know how to punctuate. I didn't know how to vowelize. And it was sort of embarrassing for me. And so I took myself out of the Rosh Yeshiva shir on the first day of yeshiva, and they said to me, well, this is why you didn't get into Mevaseret. You're being lazy. And I said, no, it's just the opposite. I know that what I need is to learn how to read, because I know that, if we're going to have a great shir and the Rebbe's going to just tell me everything outside, I'll be able to participate, but I won't really ever know how to learn. And I was really blessed to be in Rabbi Mori Rubel's shir. I don't know if you know Rabbi Rubel. He was a phenomenal teacher, and he really taught us how to read a Gemara. And I felt very privileged to be in a yeshiva that had so many different levels, that as I moved up through the ranks, and eventually I did end up back in the Rosh Yeshiva shir, but I was able to take advantage of a basic skill building shir, and then a more intermediate shir, and then ultimately back into the Rosh Yeshiva shir. So in the morning, we have all levels. Everything.
And that still exists now, the same methodology.
Absolutely. Again, the yeshiva's gone through many different kufot, we've gone through many different evolutions, but the basic core educational mission is still the same. And we have, Rav Meir Arnold and Rabbi Yosef Herschel, who are master skill builder teachers in the morning, and they're really working with their guys, simply to learn how to read a Gemara. And then you're going to have the mid-level shiurim by us. That's Rav David Lovi and Rav Daniel Glanz, incredibly inspiring people. They're teaching basic methodology, feel the bumps on the road, so to speak.
How is that different than a skill shiur?
The guys already are capable on some level of doing a bit more of the reading, but they're learning, for example, let's say how to approach a Rambam. How to approach a Tosfos. What questions do you have to ask? As the Rosh Yeshiva always says, learning how to mine the nugget. What did the Rambam really say? Being careful, feeling out those bumps on the road. And then ultimately the Rosh Yeshiva shiur of Shimon Isaacson Shlita and Rav Chagai Raviv give two incredible shiurim, certainly would rival any of the top shiurim in the country. So the challenge exists for each person in their own level. For those guys that need to work on their basic skills, they're challenging themselves, and that's a beautiful thing. For the guys that are on the intermediate level, and that's where they're holding, that's they're able to be challenged there as well. And certainly the guys on on the top shiurim, so to speak, they're going to be exceptionally challenged as well.
So Mevaseret really caters to all levels, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. But here's the thing: what we need from a Talmud is a sincere desire to grow. Now, I use that word sincere carefully, because I think everybody has a desire to grow. And there are different levels of having that desire. In Mevaseret, we talk about two types of want to. People always say, well, I don't want to, but I want to. Well, there's two types of want to. There are those guys that want to, and
it's
therefore... It's a real Lamdasha analysis. There are guys that are going to put in the time. They're going to put in the effort. They're going to work hard so that they want to. And then there are those guys that sit back and they go, well, if you'll inspire me, then I'll want to. And I want for you to do that, but I'm going to sit here until you've inspired me.
The onus is on you.
Right. And I don't think that's going to work in a place like Mevaseret. I think you have to be ready for that challenge. And in that level, in that way, we need sincerity. We need a guy who's coming in, looking to be honest with himself, digging deeper, so that he can connect and become the person that he wants to be.
So we'll get back to the curriculum in a moment, but I wanted to talk a bit more about this. So a person who's not sincere, who's not really motivated, would not really be right for Mevaseret. Is that right? Or am I saying the wrong thing?
No, you're saying it well. I would only maybe modify it in the following way. There are people, everyone has different, I think, levels of motivation. And I think it's often unfair that, we as Rebbeim sort of look at Talmidim and judge them. And we don't really know what's going on in a person's heart of hearts. And I think if you're the person who in his heart of hearts really is sincere, so that level of motivation may look a little weaker, but actually it's probably pretty strong. One of my favorite Divrei Torah, not to be too from here, but is the story of Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. We know Reish Lakish jumped from the mountain into the water to molest Rav Yochanan on some level. Exactly what the story there is a little unclear. And Rav Yochanan looked at him and said, Chelchel oraisa, you should be in learning. You have tremendous power. And Rav Yochanan was, of course, very beautiful, and Reish Lakish looked at him and said, Shufrech lenashim. Well, you should be a girl. So Rav Yochanan then said, well, I have a sister. And that's a very odd story, because that's not exactly the classic shidduch. As a guy jumps into the water to molest you is not the guy you offer to your daughter. But the way that I heard it interpreted was, when Rav Yochanan saw Reish Lakish's power, he really saw it, and he really meant it. When he said, Chelchel oraisa, you would do amazing things if you were in learning. But when Reish Lakish responded, Shofrech lenashim, your beauty is for women, what Rav Yochanan saw was another hurt Jew. That little kid who had been told all of his life he wasn't enough. And so he said to him, no, I really mean it. Like, if you would go ahead and really become that person that you have inside of you, I would let you marry my sister. And I think so, even though, yes, Mevaseret is definitely for a guy who has a sincere desire to grow, I would never want to be that person that tells someone, you're not sincere, because what do I know? So if a guy if he has that sincerity, then it's going to work. And if he doesn't, then it's not.
How do you make that determination? I know you do a lot of recruiting. How do you make such a determination about somebody?
On the interviews. Yeah, it's a really challenging process. I try to listen to the attitude that the person has, and I really ask all the Talmidim. I say, let's be honest with each other, because we want you to end up in the right yeshiva. I don't want you to end up in Mevaseret if it's the wrong place for you. To be honest with you, it's my least favorite part of the job. I feel very much like I'm evaluating them. And who am I to evaluate anybody? But, body language and what you say and how you say it means a lot. Some of the guys that have not gone into Mevaseret initially have been our biggest, quote-unquote, success stories. And I think maybe they were success stories because they pushed to get in and they showed us that sincerity. So by the time they came to Mevaseret, they were like, ready. I'm ready to hit the ground running. So I don't know that I can always know, and I definitely make mistakes. I certainly owe many, many apologies to Talmidim that have not gone into the yeshiva, that have become amazing people. In fact, one of our rebbeim in the yeshiva right now, one of the Sholem Yeshivim, was a person that I did not accept into Mevaseret. And obviously,
it's a pattern among teachers.
Yeah.
You accept as teachers people who once didn't get in, right?
Yeah, and I wonder if he would have gone to Mevaseret, if he would have done as well. But, it's you never know with these things.
How many Shana Aleph and how many Shana Bet kids do you have now?
This is a record for us Shana Aleph in a long time. We have 85 Shana Aleph this year, which is it's a big year. And when I came back to Mevaseret 9 years ago, it was a much smaller yeshiva. And I think part of what makes Mevaseret special is the family atmosphere that we have. And the challenge for us, and again, I'm just being totally transparent here, the challenge for us is how do you maintain the environment of a family in a small yeshiva when the yeshiva, Baruch Hashem, has grown? Because like many yeshivas, when we get bigger, we lose what made us special to begin with. And I think the reason why so many people were attracted to Mevaseret was because of that family atmosphere.
So what do you do about that?
We hired a lot of new rebbeim, to be honest with you. We hired a lot of new rebbeim, and we're constantly evaluating the yeshiva to see what we can make better and how we can improve it. We have 10 madrichim. That was another way we made sure that every guy is taken care of. Rav Isaacson and I always sit down every summer, and we spend hundreds of hours evaluating the yeshiva. I always tell people that I'm privileged to work with Rav Isaacson because I've never met a man with more integrity in my life. And he is the biggest critic of Mevaseret. We'll sit down in the summer and he'll say, well, we need to do this better. And I'll go, well, we did pretty good. And he said, well, that's not good enough. Let's make it better. So I think that sort of attitude of we always have to do better has kept the yeshiva strong. And I think it's the reason the reputation continues to build.
What are examples of things that need improvement that you've been working on over the years?
Yeah, I think, for us, the challenge is that we know that Mevaseret guys are successful when they really take control over their own learning. And as a result, that
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when a guy is growing, he's taking something upon himself, whether it's a specific sefer or a masechta or a midah, whatever he's doing, he's taking control and he's saying, all right, it's my time to step up. And as a result, there are 2 parts of the day that are exceptionally meaningful. One is post-night seder, where a guy will choose to stay in the base medrash and continue to learn and continue to push himself, something that he took upon himself. And the second is at any given time to pull over a guy and say, okay, at this time, I don't want to be in a shiur. I just want to sit in the base medrash and learn. And we think that that's of the highest value.
So you allow someone who doesn't want to go to shiur anymore, but he wants to sit, and he's serious, not someone who just wants the time off. He wants to sit and learn on his own. That's something that would be acceptable in Mevaseret and encouraged.
Depending on the situation, depending on the guy, absolutely. Again, we're not talking about morning seder necessarily.
Oh, okay.
But because I think morning seder, they need what we're giving them, and it's sort of our job to teach them those skills. But let's say, for example, one of the changes that we made this year is in previous years from 8 to 9, the rebbeim were leading chaburas. And we felt
8 to 9 at night.
8 to 9 at night. And we felt it was really important to get the guys into the base medrash learning on their own. And so we actually took a step back this year and allowed the guys to, learn what you want, but do it on your own and really take control and take ownership of your own learning. And it's been very exciting watching the boys do that. That's where they're really... that's where they're becoming successful because now it's really their learning. It's not our leading them, it's them leading themselves. So that was one area. And also post-night seder, we really made a lot of changes in the yeshiva to enhance the post-night seder culture. And I think, the Rambam himself says that the Rina Shel Torah is at night, and I've certainly seen that. As we made more investments in the night seder of the yeshiva, bringing in new rebbeim that weren't necessarily teaching other starim of the day, it's enhanced the entire night seder experience. Those were 2 areas where we had to improve, and I think we've done a very good job.
Let's go back to the curriculum again. We talked about Gemara in the morning.
Yeah.
What's the rest of the day like?
So again, the rest of the day is going to have an ebb and a flow to it. So you're going to have Gemara in the morning. Then you have a 2.5 hour break in the afternoon. Play ball, intramurals, hit the workout room, relax, listen to music. Go to sleep if you need. It's a long day. Then mincha, followed by our famous 3 to 4 shiurim. The 3 to 4 shiurim, and when I say 3 to 4, I mean 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The 3 to 4 shiurim are in Kol HaTorah Kula. And there is no shiur that you won't find interesting, or that kids say, I want to learn this, and it doesn't exist. So everything from Hashkafa, Halacha, Tanakh, Chasidus, Safros.
How many options are there?
Yeah, there's a ton. It's just a tremendous. I don't even know offhand, but it's a lot of options. There's a lot of Rebbeim teaching those classes. The Safros class is unique. I never thought that Safros would be something that would really change a guy's year. And we've seen that the guys that are interested in that, it really makes a difference. And the Megillah that we will learn from every year in Mevaseret is written by one of our boys.
Wow.
And it's amazing.
That's nice.
watching guys in the base medrash just sitting and writing. It's amazing that just sitting in the base medrash will change them. In fact, my Megillah right there in that holder, that Glenfiddich holder, doesn't say anything about me or the yeshiva. It just happens to be the canister I keep it in.
If it works.
Yeah, if it works, it works. It was actually written by one of the Talmidim.
Wow.
The Megillah that I read from every year is written by one of the Talmidim. The most beautiful story. Yeah, the most beautiful story was a...
And it tastes good too.
The most beautiful story, I think, in my 9 years in Mevaseret was there was a phenomenal artist who took the Safra Shir. And on every page of the Megillah, he drew in the background like a picture of what that story was about. So, for example, on the Asara Harugei Haman, Sarbonei Haman, when they were hung, he drew a picture of a tree and nooses hanging off those trees. And it was just magnificent. And I said, I will buy this Megillah from you. And he said, no, Rebbe, it's not for sale. And I saw that there was something he was telling me, and I said, what's going on over here? And he said, my dad actually took a second job that I should be able to come to Mevaseret. It was really important to me to figure out how to say thank you, and this Megillah is for him. So that was a very special story. Wow. Yeah. And actually the boys that take their test in Safras will actually get smicha in Safras and write their own tefillin, write their own mezuzahs. It's a really beautiful thing. So there's literally nothing that you can't learn in Mevaseret. The Hashkafa classes will answer any questions you've ever had. And guys today have questions.
And this is all from 3 to 4. That's
all from 3 to 4. Absolutely. It's in that slot. Guys have questions. Guys want to do personal growth. There's a shiur called I Want the Truth that I'd give. That's a personal growth lab. There's a shiur...
What kind of things do you teach in that class?
Yeah, it's, going through all the midos. We're using different svarim like Ali Shur. To be honest with you, I also use secular svarim. There's a poet-philosopher. His name is David White. And I find him to be phenomenally insightful. And, I'll contrast what David White says with the Rambam, and the way that the Rambam viewed Kas, and the way that David White viewed Kas, and the way Chazal see Kas. So you're gonna do everything in that class. Rav Herschel gives a shiur called Basics of Judaism. Why we do what we do. And that's, again, another phenomenal shiur. And the guys need to have their questions answered. The Rosh Yeshiva gives a shiur called Torah Misinai, the development of Torah Shabbal Peh. So you're really going to see Kol Torah Kula. Later on in the year, the Rosh Yeshiva will give a shiur in philosophy of Rav Soloveitchik. Rav Chagai Raviv will give a shiur in the philosophy of Rav Kook. So you're going to hear a lot of different types of Torah.
So a person doesn't only choose one class and he's stuck there for their whole year?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. We ask guys to register for a particular shiur. In January, we'll do like a second semester, so to speak, and the boys can re-register. But of course, at any point in the year, if a boy feels like I'd rather get a little bit more of that in my day or something else, they come to me, and I'll never say no to a switch like that. And then from 4 to 6, it's back to Gemara B'kiyas. We think that at the end of the day...
Is that frontal learning, preparing on their own?
Both, depending on the shiur and depending on what that particular shiur needs. In Mevaseret, there's very much a culture of being in the shiur room and in the base medrash. So some guys will be in... the base medrash before they go to shiur. Some guys will go to shiur before they go to base medrash and then coming back for a chazara. And also there's shiurim on a lot of different levels again and in a lot of different styles. So
B'kiyas we're talking about.
Yeah. So Rav Yedidya Berzon, for example, he believes in fast-paced b'kiyas. And they will finish Beitzah, though they started this year in Elul, they will finish Beitzah by Chanukah, which is an incredible achievement.
It's not an easy Masechta either.
Not an easy Masechta. And he gets in there and he screams Shas, and that's like famous in Mevaseret, Rav Yedidya screaming Shas. And he's, of course, a person who knows Shas Baal Peh. And, for those that know the legend of Rav Yedidya, it is in fact true. And he really represents an incredible dumus for these boys to see what you can look like when you just know Shas. And then there are shiurim that go really slow. Line by line, let's master every word before we move on to the next word. And again, everything in between. So that's the Gemara B'kiyas. Then again, from 6 to 8, there's another 2-hour break that includes dinner. And again, chill out because you got a big night seder coming up. From 8 to 9, as I mentioned, guys learn B'chavrusa, whatever they want. And that's it's again guided by the Rebbeim, meaning there are Rebbeim overseeing each pair of chavrusa. You're never going to get stuck. You're never going to go, oh, I don't have anyone to answer my question. But we want you to take ownership of it. And then from 9 to 10, then the boys are back in those same 3 to 4 style shiurim. We have them again from 9 to 10. So this way, if there was a particular Rebbe that you wanted to take from 3 to 4, but because of the way your schedule worked out, you couldn't take him. Well, now you'll have the opportunity.
It's available again at that time.
Correct. It'll be available again to take him from 9 to 10. And then 10 o'clock, we head into post-night Seder. Thursday night is Mishmar. Of course. Monday night is called Monday Night Munchies, which really needs to be renamed. And, that's just guys sitting and learning in the base medrash. And then the Mashkiach, Rav Daniel Glanz, brings out food at like 11, 11:15, 11:30. And, it's just a really great feeling in the yeshiva. Also, one of the things now that we're past Sukkot, is every month we roll out post-Night Seder another project. So guys, and any month can, they start to get into post-Night Seder, there's another option. So Rav Daniel Steinertz, who's our Shana Bet Mashkiach, he now gives a shir in Chagiga, the boys will finish Chagiga, from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning. And you have,
when is that? What day of the week?
That's every night of the week.
Wow.
I don't know if it's Tuesday. It might be, though. Rav Steinertz is incredibly dedicated, and the Talmidim really appreciate his dedication. And he's there from at least till 1 o'clock in the morning. Wednesday night last week, he was there till 1:45 a.m. I said, Rav Steinertz, what are you doing in the base medrash till 1:45 a.m.? So he told me that this boy was, in the Chagiga shir. Chagiga, it's prone to a lot of hashkafic questions. This boy had a question.
I would say that, yes.
This boy had a question, and he stayed in the base medrash till 1:45 in the morning with this boy. So, and you have over 1 million of guys that are doing it. And these are guys that were never sitting from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning learning in the base medrash before. And so every month another Masechta will be rolled out. And so we'll always give guys the opportunity to jump on board.
They do the Masechta in 1 month?
No, meaning there'll be, Rav Steinertz will start Chagiga.
Oh, and then somebody else will start it.
Correct, somebody will start in Cheshvan and Kislev, Teves. And there's always this way, whenever you go, I'm ready to make that jump. You go, well, I heard in a week that, this Rebbe is starting a new project. So there's always the opportunity to jump on board.
What about the relationship between Rebbeim and Talmidim? Obviously, every yeshiva is going to say they have close relationships. I'm sure it's equally true in Mevaseret. But when you're describing it, is there something that makes it a little bit different in Mevaseret? Part of the reason I'm asking is Mevaseret's location. Do the Rebbeim really live near there, or they're not so close? That's what I'm really getting at here.
Okay, well, let me answer the technical question first, and then I'll get to the heart of what you're asking. Technically, yes, Mevaseret Rebbeim do live in Mevaseret. We do have, I think, 8 or 9 Rebbeim that live on campus this year. Having said that, of course, a lot of the Rebbeim will live in either Beit Shemesh or Yerushalayim, mostly. But the Mevaseret Rebbeim are not generally one Seder a day Rebbeim. And so the connection that they have to the yeshiva is, going to be expansive. So let's say a Rebbe comes from Shachris and then he doesn't leave necessarily until 6 o'clock. So most of his day is going to be spent in Mevaseret, let alone having the guys for Shabbos, which is, the constant refrain in Mevaseret. The first Shabbos of the year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Simchas Torah, which is basically, as you know, that's, let's say 4 out of the first 6 weeks of yeshiva. Those are what we call all hands on deck Shabbatot or Yom Tovim, and that means that all of the Rebbeim will come in. And so Rosh Hashanah, I think we had, including the children, we had 130 extra people. There's only 120 guys in the yeshiva when you include Shana Bet, so having 130 extra people. But the Rosh Yeshiva always says that's part of the mission of Mevaseret. We're a family, and so family's got to be there. And it's beautiful to watch the guys, meet the Rebbeim's families. And then when they come for Shabbos, it's like, yeah, we already sat together at the meals in yeshiva. So even though it's not necessarily a local yeshiva, even though we do have a good number of staff that live on campus, but it is our lives. And we do live and breathe the yeshiva. In terms of the relationship that the boys have with their Rebbeim, I think that's the hallmark of our yeshiva. And the reality is that today, a Selah Harav, I think it's the portal towards really building a relationship with Hashem. Guys have a lot to talk about. They have a lot to talk about in their lives. They have a lot of questions. They want to build a relationship with their Rebbe. That's, I think, the most important thing you're going to find in the yeshiva. And the learning in Mevaseret is great, and it's definitely challenging, intellectually challenging, and it'll challenge you even emotionally. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a Rebbe, it's not going to work. And we really pride ourselves on the fact that the guys love their Rebbeim, and the Rebbeim love the guys. I will highlight one story that I heard a number of years ago from Dr. Levitz. Dr. Levitz, of course, being the head of the Family Institute in Yerushalayim, and he ran Wurzweiler for 25 years. And he told a story to a group of mechanchim. It was at a seminar, but this story touched me in a very deep way. He told a story about a mother that came to him, and she said, "You have to help my son. He's become obsessed with collecting purses, like pocketbooks." And all day long, all he does is play with his pocketbooks, and he doesn't want to get married. He doesn't want to do anything. He just wants to play with his purses all day. And you have to help my son. Will you see my son? So he said, sure, of course. So a young man comes in, 25 years old, sits down with Dr. Levitz, and Dr. Levitz looks at him and goes, your mother tells me you like purses. He looks back at Dr. Levitz and says, I love purses. And Dr. Levitz is trying to join with him, so he says, well, tell me what you like about them. He says, well, I like to line them up, different shapes, different sizes, put things in, take them out. And he goes, your mother tells me you don't want to get married. He goes, well, why should I get married? A person gets married for companionship. I get all the companionship that I need from my purses. Plus, my purses don't talk back. I don't have any relationship problems with my purses. And then Dr. Levitz looked at the audience, and about a group of 100 Rebbeim or so, maybe a little bit more. And he said, so who had the problem, the mother or the son? And all the, we call the older generation of Rebbeim said the son, because he's obsessed with purses. And you as a therapist, you have to tell him that he has a problem and he has to change his life. And Dr. Levitz smiled knowingly. I think that was actually his point. He said, no, I think the son was okay. I think the mother had the problem. And his point was that the son was okay with the choices that he was making. And it's his life. And he wasn't going to be able to work with him on a problem that he didn't think existed. So he looked at this young man and he said, so what are you doing here in therapy? He goes, you have to help me with my mother. She's driving me crazy. And that's what they worked on in therapy. And I thought the message was a very profound message for us as Rebbeim. Because we have an interesting challenge. On the one hand, we're meant to teach the boys what we feel is, a Torah lifestyle. And of course, that's a very vague term. And there's a lot of broad things that could mean. But we have a challenge because how do we teach them what Hashem wants them to do? And at the same time, how do we be accepting of the choices that they're making? And how do we allow them to make those choices? And I think that that's the hallmark, really, of what we're trying to do in Mevaseret. We'll challenge them on a general level, and we'll say, let's think about our commitment to Hashem. Let's think about what role that plays in our life. And at the end of the day, we're going to be there for them, whatever choices they make, because it's their life. And I think that a Mevaseret Rebbe has to be extremely respectful of his Talmidim. You have to have a lot of faith in your Talmidim, that they're going to make good, healthy, balanced choices in their lives. But we're going to be there to support them no matter what they do. And I think that's an important part of what it means to be a Mevaseret Rebbe. I think that creates a lot of safety. And what I hear most from, especially, high school kids is, I don't necessarily feel safe to talk to my Rebbeim about anything. I'm worried about the consequences. And they're also worried that, the Rebbe's going to tell them, well, this is the way it has to be. And I think we're very open. And while we may be challenging, at the end of the day, we have to be accepting as to who they are, who they want to be, what choices they make. That safety, it's the hallmark of a Mevaseret Rebbe. It's the basis for everything that we're doing. That's the petri dish. That's the birthplace of their growth. And I think we foster that growth by allowing them to make their own choices and to really consider all the different options.
Well, how far does that go? Let's talk about post-Yeshiva.
Yeah.
Let's talk about college versus YU versus Shana Bet versus Kollel. What does Mevaseret encourage its students to do, and how much do you respect their choices?
Well, I respect their choices no matter what. And the reality is that I can't be responsible for their choices. So I'm not going to make their choices for them. I'm not a prophet. I'm not the child of a prophet. And who am I to say what college experience is going to be the right college experience for them? We have a Talmud in the Yeshiva who went to Cornell, and he became a student leader there in the Jewish community. And I think that it was probably so much better for him to go to Cornell than it would have been for him to go to anywhere else. Which is not to say that Cornell and secular college doesn't have its challenges. And that's definitely something that we'll talk to the students about. And we're going to be honest with them. We're going to tell them what we've seen. I was on the phone just today with a Talmud of mine, a very close Talmud of mine, who's in secular college, and he was telling me about the challenges of being in secular college. But at the end of the day, it's his life, and he's got to make that choice.
Do you approach them first, or do you wait for them to come to you?
They always come to us first. They always come to us first because, like I said, we have that safety within the yeshiva. So that conversation is never going to be, well, I don't feel like I can discuss this with the Rebbe because I've heard the Rebbe so many times. No, it's not like that by us. So they'll come and they'll discuss it. And yeah, I think the respect goes very far. I have a Talmud right now who's in Dartmouth. and I try to speak to him as often as I can. And I think he's an amazing person, and he's doing great. The Talmidim that choose to go to YU and experiences like that, where they're going, let's say, to a local college and to a yeshiva, those are also great choices. YU certainly has a tremendous amount to offer. I'm very proud of the relationship that we have with YU. Rav Moshe Tzvi Weinberg, my old friend who actually went to Mevaseret, is actually speaking in Mevaseret tonight. And we'll have over the course of the year, a lot of the YU Rebbeim will come. And yes, there are challenges everywhere, even in YU. So the Talmud really has to make that decision for himself. It's the only, in my opinion, and I think this is what I learned in Mevaseret, it's really the only healthy way to go about it. I think that if we push our agenda so much that the Talmud doesn't have the capability of making his own choices, then we've really hurt the Talmud. I think that's abusive. And so there is a fine line and a balance that we have to walk, where we certainly want a guy to be in an environment where he's going to continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to prioritize his relationship with Hashem. And, there are more challenging environments, but at the end of the day, everyone has to make their own choices.
When a student comes to Mevaseret, what religious level do you expect him to be maintaining? In other words, would you accept a student who isn't fully Shomer Shabbos, or is there a certain minimum?
Your basic student in Mevaseret is obviously Shomer Shabbos and keeping kosher and all of that. Yeah, he's already on that level, by and large. Have there been guys who have struggled with it in the past? Absolutely. And that's something that I'm proud to say, that if a Talmud comes to me and he says, Rebbe, I know everyone thinks that I'm a, regular Shomer Shabbos Jew, but actually I've struggled with that in the past. And again, I'm proud to work with those Talmidim. Of course, the baseline is going to be that in Yeshiva it's expected that you're going to be Shomer Shabbos, and certainly a Shomer Shabbos, environment in the Yeshiva, and that definitely is our basic guy. We have had guys in the Yeshiva before that are Bali Tshuva. We have a boy in the Yeshiva who not only is he a Baal Tshuva, but he was Makar of his entire family, a really inspirational young man. And that is the general accepted level of observance is, your basic level of observance, no question about it. But again, what we're looking for is that sincere desire to enhance your observance, which doesn't necessarily mean to be more observant, but I think it means to bring more passion, more life, more light into your observance. And so, there are a lot of us that daven and put on tefillin. As one Talmud of mine once said, he goes, yeah, but for me it's just wrapping straps. And I think that that cut to the heart of it. There are people that are putting on tefillin, and there are people that are wrapping straps. There are people that are saying words, and then there are people that are having a conversation. And that's ultimately the difference in terms of having passion in your avodas Hashem.
What kind of hashkafa, worldview, are you trying to impart to your students?
Subtle, nuanced, and broad.
Subtle, nuanced, and broad. That's nice.
Yeah, it's even true. The Rosh Yeshiva of Mevaseret, I remember when we were talking 8 years ago, when we were writing the mission statement of the yeshiva, and he had just taken over as Rosh Yeshiva from our founding Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Azaria Berzon, and I had just taken over his position as Menahel. And we were writing the mission statement, and he said to me, we draw from all the well springs from all strains of Yadus, something along those lines. And I remember thinking about that language, we draw from all the well springs. And I thought that was a very beautiful language, because I think a wellspring, first of all, is a very apropos mashal, because there is so much that's come from within, from all the different strains of Judaism. And we can learn so much by taking a little bit from each of them. And so that's for sure one thing, that plurality of appreciating the different Gedolim. And that the boys will hear shiurim in, from Rav Kook and from Rav Soloveitchik, and at the same time, we'll have, shiurim that are, being said over in the name of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, and everything in between. And I think that's important. I think it's important to know that, in today's day and age, we can't afford to be picky. We're all sitting at the same table, and we have to enjoy all the food that's on the table. Also, I think the tolerance that comes along with that. I would like to believe that a Talmud who goes through that experience is going to have an appreciation for every strain of Judaism, and therefore his approach is going to be more tolerant. He can see the beauty in a lot of different strains of Judaism, and I think that's really important. And again, especially in today's day and age where there's so much infighting, I'd like to think that this is partially a solution. When I say subtle and balanced, I think that's also important, because Judaism is not black and white. Today, people would like it to be black and white, I think. And I don't mean black and white, that was not a commentary on the yeshivish community. I mean black and white in the sense of this is true and this is not. And while there are times that we can say that, I think most often the truth lies somewhere in the middle. For example, the Lubavitcher Rebbe and the Satmar Rebbe famously had a machlokas about putting tefillin on Jews in the street. And I don't think either one of them was wrong. I think each one of them was bringing a meaningful contribution to the table, and I think we as the Talmidim could appreciate both of where they're coming from, and maybe one side speaks to you more, but why not have respect for the other side as well? So that's the general hashkafa of the yeshiva.
What about Zionism? Is that something which is part of the yeshiva curriculum, or is it something which is part of this? Well, some people are, some people aren't, and we're going to show both sides.
The answer, absolutely, Zionism is part of the yeshiva. It's definitely one of our core beliefs. Yom HaAtzmaut, we take the boys to Merkaz HaRav. And we have, again, Rebbeim from all strains, from all walks of life. As a yeshiva, it's definitely a Zionistic yeshiva. But we value people that don't necessarily have the same approach as us. And that doesn't mean that it's our approach, but I think we ought to value the fact that there were Gedolim that didn't go that way. To me, the Satmar Rebbe is not my enemy. I'll never touch the Satmar Rebbe's toes. And that doesn't mean that that was the approach of my Rebbeim or the approach of the yeshiva. But yeah, so in that regard, I think we're pluralistic, but it absolutely is a Zionistic yeshiva.
Is there an overall type of hashkafic value, a primary value, let's say, that if you had to say there's one value that Mevaseret is trying to impart above all others, to the degree you can say that? Is there one?
Yeah, I think it would be that that religion should be the lighthouse. What I mean to say when I say the lighthouse is the famous joke of the ship that sees a light coming in the distance and it appears to be another ship and it says, please move. I'm coming towards you. And the ship says, you move. And they go back and forth until finally one of the ships says, I'm not a ship, I'm a lighthouse. So you're going to be the one that has to move. In our daily lives, God created us for a mission. And what will be our fealty to that mission? Where will be our allegiance? And I think what we're trying to impart to the boys is you were born to serve God. And we're going to serve God in so many different ways. And I don't believe that you're serving God in shul but not in work. I think we're serving God in every single thing that we do. But let religion be the lighthouse. Let that be our guiding light. Let that be the pillar upon which everything else stands. I think that would be our overall value.
One of the things that's coming out, at least to me, in our discussion is Mevaseret is very much into challenging, to try and really push students to really achieve what they can. This is not a place if you want to have a relaxing year and not really work. You have to work in Mevaseret.
Absolutely.
What about if someone comes expecting that experience and then he isn't quite up to that challenge?
Absolutely, yeah. And
what do you do in a case like that?
Well, if you have a relationship with the Talmud, then it's easy because that's something that you talk about. And you say, well, how's this going for you? And what do we need to fix here? And what can you do? Because, first of all, again, yes, it is a challenging environment. I will quote Rav Isaacson here. He always says, Judaism should be like carrying a bag of diamonds. They may be heavy, but they should never weigh you down. And so, yes, absolutely, the yeshiva is a challenging place. And I wouldn't use the word relaxing, but I would say it's an incredibly enjoyable experience. It's something you're going to take with you for the rest of your life. So it's not like it's weighing you down. Now, let's say a Talmud shows up and it's more than he can handle, or it's more than he expected. So great, we're going to work with you. We're gonna figure out how to make this work for you. And if that means adapting your schedule to what you can do now and working you through the process, then for sure.
Do you have Rebbeim who are available to learn one-on-one with guys who don't fit into the regular Miskeret, the regular framework?
Depending on the need of the Talmud, yes, absolutely. And then, we're also going to challenge the honesty of that particular Talmud. Can you really not do it, or are you just being lazy? And that's okay also, because laziness is a part of us. And we have to appreciate all of our parts, and we have to work with all of our parts. So I think it's really just getting to the heart of who the Talmud is. So if you have a Talmud who's struggling, but you have a relationship with him, because you've had him for Shabbos, because it's a safe place for him to talk about what's going on in his life, it's really not so difficult to get those guys moving. They want to. They just need to know how to connect the dots.
We talked a little bit about the location vis-a-vis the Rebbeim. What about for the students? Can you talk a little bit about the positives and negatives of a student spending a year in Mevaseret?
Mevaseret is a suburb of Yerushalayim. It's actually a suffix lahalacha, whether it's Yerushalayim or not. Everybody in Yerushalayim says it's not part of Yerushalayim. Everybody in Mevaseret says it is part of Yerushalayim. You get the feeling that there's a little more than halacha going on in that conversation. It's actually practically Nogea on Purim. We have to keep 2 days of Purim, which somehow nobody minds. So we have to keep 2 days of Purim.
You have 2 full days of Purim?
Yeah. And the boys will come to, their outside of Yerushalayim Rebbeim on the first day, and they'll go to their inside of Yerushalayim Rebbeim on the second day. What's nice about the location of Mevaseret is it's close but not too close. So seeing as it's a suburb of Yerushalayim and it's a regular Yerushalayim bus with bus stop immediately outside of the yeshiva, the buses run every 15 minutes and it's a 12-minute bus ride to the central bus station, to the Tachana Merkazi. So you're close. And what's nice about that is, on a Tuesday afternoon, we give the boys off, or they have chesed opportunities. So if they want to go to Yerushalayim, it's there, and it's available. You don't have to travel 45 minutes to an hour to get to Yerushalayim, on the one hand. On the other hand, it's nice to be a little out of it, because it gives you the opportunity to step back and to really focus on yeshiva. We do have a burgers bar, a makolet, a pizza store, and a butcher across the street from the yeshiva. That's 10 steps away from the yeshiva. The famous Mevaseret Mall is 12-minute walk away, right down the block. For as long as I can remember, guys have been saying we need to have a zip line to the mall, just because it would be much faster. The mall is like...
That would be convenient.
Yeah, it's like a 5-minute zip line away, but it's a 12-minute walk. And actually, they just built another mall, which is twice the size of the first mall.
You can see it from the highway.
Yes, you can see both malls. You can see
both on either side of the highway.
That's right. And so right beyond the old mall is now a new mall as well.
Is that open already?
Yeah, it's open already. And everything you need there's a Rami Levy there. And so everything you need is within the Mevaseret area. And so it has that convenience. But at the same time, it's close. And it's nice to be able to go to Yerushalayim proper and to do all of the things that the holy city of Yerushalayim has to offer.
Do the kids have time off?
Absolutely. There is a 1 o'clock curfew, but starting post-night Seder at 10 o'clock, they're able to go out. This always, that 1 o'clock curfew always sounds very different to the parents and to the Talmidim. To the parents, they go 1 o'clock, why so late? And to the Talmidim, they go 1 o'clock, why so early? And
which probably means you're doing it about right.
Right, exactly. And the whole issue, frankly, of the curfew is really a non-issue, because town is only cool for a small amount of time. I tell people it's like a real-life Facebook. It's anyone you ever knew or ever heard of in a 4-block radius, and it's amazing for 3 weeks. And then somebody realizes that it's like, this is really dumb, but nobody yet has the courage to say how dumb it is. The malacha. And then after Sukkot, finally somebody goes, this is dumb, I'm not going to town anymore. And so after that, it's really a non-factor. But they go out Tuesday afternoons, they can go out during their breaks, as long as they're back for Seder. We expect a certain level of maturity. So... yeah,
what kind of extra facilities do you have also? I assume aside from going to Yerushalayim, you mentioned before, a workout room.
Yeah, so there's a beautiful workout room, which is actually dedicated a couple of years ago by one of the Talmidim. His family dedicated the workout room, and it's really a very impressive workout room. We have one of the Rebbeim in the Yeshiva is a very impressive lifter. So he designed...
Can I ask who that is?
Yeah, I know he doesn't like me publicizing it so much, because the truth is his genius in Torah and his dedication to the Talmidim is legendary. So whenever I talk about him in the workout room, he always says, that's what my thing is. I said, well, listen, the rest of us can touch our shoulders. Whenever he tries to touch his shoulders, the muscles block his forearms. Rav Daniel Steinertz is a real... he's really impressive. And actually... for him, there's amazing chinuch work that he does because of his capabilities in the workout room. So he designed the workout room. It's really nice. There's a full-court basketball court on campus, and we have intramural basketball. There is a music room. It's just a good place. It's a beautiful Chader Ochel, a couple of brand new rooms in the dorm that were newly renovated this year. We renovated the old dorms a couple of years ago. So yeah, we have all the basic amenities. Everything is on one campus, gated campus. There are 71 Torani families that live on campus. So
you live on campus with you?
On campus, absolutely. Yeah.
What's their connection with the yeshiva?
It's either they're part of the Meretz Kollel, or they're part of the high school, or some people have just been there forever. And there are some random people that live in Mevaseret. Rav Mati Greenberg, the former Yeshiva of KBY, lives in Mevaseret, which is amazing to have him there. Rav Sinai Adler, who's the former Rav Rashi of Ashdod, I believe, lives on campus, and some real Torah luminaries who live on campus. It's a really nice place. The view is spectacular. The view is really spectacular, especially at night when everything's lit up by the stars over Yerushalayim. It's really beautiful.
What do the students who come to Mevaseret have in common?
I think that sincerity. That we spoke about. I think every guy that I have the privilege of interacting with, and they, again, like I said, they teach me so much. They really want to make something of themselves. They really want to grow. They've come because they want to grow, and I think they see that in each other. And there's a lot of different personalities, because it is at this point a bigger yeshiva, but I think that people generally have a respect for each other because they see, look what this guy's doing, and look what that guy's doing, and look, this guy made this Kabbalah and that guy made that Kabbalah, and it's beautiful to watch. I will tell you that one of the Talmidim was having trouble, waking up for Shachris. Like many young men who stay up too late in the dorms, hanging out with their friends. Yes. And he was telling me that his roommates, though, are doing it, and he feels like, if my roommates are doing it, I really got to start pushing myself. And I think that's amazing. I think that kinnas sofrim tarba chachma, that he feels, he looks at his roommates and he respects them and he's like, I want to be like that. And I think that's a great thing. There's a lot of energy and enthusiasm, positivity in the yeshiva. The boys sort of feed off each other. So if they have anything in common, it's that sincerity. Having said that, they have nothing in common. I think that's the only thing they have in common. They are so different, and because they come from so many different places.
Is that a problem?
No, I think it's amazing. I think that's what makes the yeshiva a special place. We like cholent in Judaism, right? If it's just a regular, if it's just a regular piece of meat, if it's just one piece of meat, it's nice. But I think all the different things that all the Talmidim come with, whether they're from England or America, whether it's from LA, Chicago, New York, New Jersey, Seattle, St. Louis, we've had them all, Cleveland, Columbus, we have guys from all over the place, and they come with such unique backgrounds and such unique personalities. It really contributes so much to the yeshiva. I love that about Mevaseret. I've always loved that about Mevaseret.
One last question.
Sure.
How would you define a successful year for a student?
If they've gotten a little closer to the person that they wanted to be. We talk about becoming the guy that you want to be. But that's really a lifetime achievement award. I think we're overselling it a bit when we say, you'll come to Mevaseret and you'll be the person you want to be. I don't think that's really fair to say. I don't know if it's necessarily true. I don't know if it's possible. I mean, you're 18 years old. Can you really become the person you want to be in a year? I've been doing this process, for 18 years, and I'm still not even close to the guy that I want to be, but I've made some headway. So I think a successful year is a guy who's on track for that. He's living life a little more authentically. He's capable of looking in the mirror and saying, this is an area where I need to work on, and this is something I'm really proud of my achievement. I think that's a successful year. Now, what does that look like? And by definition, that has to be an individual pursuit. For different guys, it means different things. I get the feeling that today in Judaism, a lot of people are trying to mold people into a particular type. So the word success, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but the word success sort of rubs me the wrong way, because it's like, he's successful if he's in the base medrash 10 hours a day. And there's this sort of like mold of what we expect of like a good Jew. And I don't know good Jew, bad Jew, I just know Jew. And it seems to me that Hashem created Jews, and he created us as individuals because we each have something unique to contribute. I think it would be a real shame if we took that away from a Talmud. And, as long as they're themselves, that's good. That's good. I think, again, we have to have faith that the natural Talmud is going to be somebody that makes us proud because he's doing good things with his life. And we have to be patient because, as you know, what a Talmud may or may not do in yeshiva, he may start doing in his 20s, in his late 20s, in his early 30s, in his late 30s, in his early 40s. You never know when it's actually going to come to fruition. But I think if we're on that path and we're a little closer to our authentic selves, then I think we've done a really good job.
Rabbi Mordechai Berg, thank you very, very much.
Oh, this was absolutely a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much.
For more information about Yeshivat Sharei Mevaseret Zion, go to www.ysmz.org.